Robert Franke is Executive VP and Global Practice Lead at Harris Interactive. And Robert, so you guys have your annual reputation quotient poll out, and you say Facebook, they're kind of falling down on all these big measures like visibility and reputation. What does the poll show?
Right, so Facebook this year didn't even make the most visible list. So they are not seen by the general public as one of the most visible companies in America right now, not even in the top 60. So they're not even measured on our list.
Might it actually be good news for Facebook? Because everybody's aware of the service. You've got hundreds of millions of Americans using it. If they were in the reputation survey, wouldn't it be likely that it'd be a negative because people would be freaking out about privacy and things like that? And doesn't this show that the public actually couldn't care less about that?
It's interesting that you use the word service because that's actually how the public thinks about them. Our study shows that they don't think of them yet as a company. They think of them as a tool, a channel, a service that they use every day. In terms of the positive or negative, we still measure them, even though they're not in the public part of our study. And their reputation is barely average. So yes, there are some liabilities that come along with it, but one of the reasons that companies want to build reputation is so that they can, over time, build equity. When a crisis comes along, when they need to influence a particular stakeholder, they've built up some of that equity. And right now, Facebook has an equity gap.
So how big of a problem is it for Facebook? Because it certainly seems like this IPO is going to be red hot coming out of the gate.
Absolutely. So how big of a problem is yet to be seen. I will say the biggest problem that our study sees for them is that they really lack in an area. There are 6 dimensions of reputation that we measure, and one of them is called emotional appeal. And over the 13 years of our study, a company that lacks emotional appeal with stakeholders who they need to be engaged with can't build reputation equity through any of the other paths. That lack of trust, respect, and being admired becomes a real friction point, or a speed bump, if you will, for being able to get credit for some of the other things that you do.
Isn't part of this, though, that Facebook's a private company, has been for its entire history, which is still remarkably short? I mean, one of the ways we hear about companies all the time is what their stocks do every day. They're on the news, things like that. Only reason Facebook's been in the news was the movie and privacy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll be the changing dynamic for them. So they are going public. They've made that choice. And so the question is whether or not they're going to be able to make that transition to being seen as a public company while still maintaining some of the other things they want to be known for. And also by going public, it does bring some of those negative elements in, and how you manage them becomes critical to your success over time.
So what does the poll tell you or show you about how people are viewing the stock itself?
Well, in addition to the broad general public that we measure a subset of investors in their study. Now, these are not your institutional investors, but these are individual investors. And what we show is only 7% right now definitely say they plan on buying the stock given the chance, and 0% say they would recommend the stock at this point in time.
So 7% doesn't sound like a big number, but actually when you're surveying investors, for 7% to say they're definitely buying a single stock actually seems high.
It's not. If you compare it to some of the other visible companies on our list, as a comparison, nearly 4 times that amount today would say they would still buy Google.
So you mentioned, or Henry referenced the Social Network movie. You said they were on the visibility list last year because of the movie. Is it possible that movie is one of the reasons why people don't have such a positive feeling about Facebook?
It's certainly very possible. I don't think that did a whole lot for them in terms of, again, that emotional appeal, the trust, the leadership, and the respect. So they really, again, have to take a look. We also measure how people come to know about companies and the knowledge that they have. And unlike nearly any other company that we looked at this year, more than 2/3 say the only way they've come to know anything about Facebook is through conversation with friends and family. So right now it's strictly word of mouth. And again, when you're going to be a public corporation, there's a burden on you. There's an expectation for you to communicate a little bit more. And stylistically, what the public is looking for are companies who communicate sincerely, with a certain amount of transparency and honesty. And on those measures right now, Facebook also has a serious gap.
And one of the ways Facebook's viewing the IPO, I think, is just another step in their development. Over the years, have you seen companies gradually move from the middle of the pack to the top, if that's what they're committed to doing?
Absolutely. Google is a great example of that. So they began, and their first knowledge about them was, again, sort of in that average place. But Google also did a really great job of coming forward with a vision of what they were looking to do. Their leaders were out front in talking about things like social responsibility, about financial performance. Google has always done a reasonably good job of actually giving more information than those expected, and that in itself can really help your reputation.
I'm going to leave it there, Rob. Thanks very much.